It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. And now here's your host, Geno Jones.
What's happening, everybody? Yeah, it is showtime. Yes, it is. I hope everybody had a great weekend. It is time for the Geno Jones Show. I come to you live Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. out on the West Coast. Please subscribe to the Geno Jones channel. Please share this and every episode. And please like every episode. Oh, by the way, if you like the show, if you love the show, if you'd like to be a sponsor, if you'd like to advertise, you'd like to be a part of the Geno Jones Show family, part of the Geno Jones Network, I'd love to have you. If you're looking for the ultimate pitch man or brand ambassador, as they call them now, to promote your brand, build your brand, your business, help you generate some sales and revenue, move your products, your goods, your services. I know y'all having problems getting stuff moved around the country. You know, this whole shipping issue, that's a whole nother episode. I'm the king of pitchmen, just in case you didn't know. Holla at your people right here. Leave me a message, Geno Jones Show at Gmail, or leave me a message right here on my YouTube channel. No, that's how you spell Geno Jones right there. I hope everybody had a great weekend. So I woke up this morning to some very disturbing news. So I want to dedicate today's show to a great man, a great American, a great patriot, a true patriot, a real patriot. Not folks that call themselves a patriot and then go and storm the United States Capitol, engaging in treason and an insurrection. No, not that kind of patriot, a real patriot, a great role model. General Colin Powell. In case you hadn't heard by now, General Colin Powell, he passed away. As a matter of fact, he got sick about a week ago. He and his wife both came down with COVID-19. His wife apparently is doing better, thank goodness, but unfortunately, General Powell, in spite of all the treatment, I heard he was given basically all the treatment that is available to try to help someone recover from COVID-19, but he passed away from complications of COVID-19 and having a condition called multiple myeloma. As a matter of fact, Dr. Thaddeus John Bell, one of our resident doctors that comes on the show to inform the public about different conditions, will explain to us how a condition, a cancer, because multiple myeloma or myelioma is a blood cancer that it attacks the immune cells that produce the antibodies that fight COVID-19. But Dr. Bell, he can explain it better than me because he's got the receipts and the degrees and the experience as a doctor. Also, we learned that General Powell was suffering from Alzheimer's. And General Powell also is a prostate cancer survivor. So this was General Powell's second bout with cancer, just a different type of cancer. So he was dealing with this condition called multiple myeloma when he came down with COVID-19 on top of the Parkinson's disease, not to mention, I'm sure, the prostate cancer that he's had in the past did not help his immune system. So we've been talking about. Now, General Powell's legacy includes his speech at the United Nations in 2003, where he was given flawed intelligence. Basically, the CIA threw him under the bus. Now, I'm just going to call it the way it is. That's the bottom line. Yes, the general still went in front of the UN. He was given information he had questions about, but he had talked to the CIA and he drilled these people and asked them, and they convinced him that the information they were giving him, that the CIA was giving General Powell, was truthful. Well, it turns out it wasn't truthful, and he wasn't happy about that. But he did take ownership. He took ownership, and he talked about the mistake that he made, was giving that speech in front of the United Nations in 2003. He owned it. He never supported going into Iraq. Never supported going into the Iraq war. Never. He told at the time President George Bush that. As a matter of fact, he was the only member of President Bush's cabinet who was against going into Iraq. He had something called, they call it now the Powell Doctrine. Basically, he said he had a theory or doctrine. He really called it the Pottery Barn doctrine. If you break it, you own it. You go to Pottery Barn and you break something, that means you own it. You got to pay for it, broken or not. It's yours. You can glue it, try to fix it or glue it back together, but if you break it, you own it. That was his theory about going into any war. Actually, he hated war. As a matter of fact, he was the head, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he was the head military officer back in the early 90s during the Gulf War. Then he became Secretary of State. Just a really honorable man. Once again, he was a great man, a great American, a great patriot, a true patriot, and a great role model in spite of the mistakes that he made. He was not a perfect man. None of us are perfect people. And he would be the first to tell you that. But he was a very honorable man and one of the most honorable men that I've ever had a chance to follow or to learn a lot about. And if you talk to anybody, including men and women who served in the military under General Powell, that had any contact with him or knew of him, all spoke very highly of him, that he was an inspiration, specifically to black men and women, but he was an inspiration to all Americans. White men and women who served under General Powell, they loved him. He was a hero. They idolized him. They revered him. They were in awe of him as much, in many cases, almost as much as many of the black men and women who served under General Powell, the Hispanic men and women, not just the Christian men and women, the Muslim men and women, those who were atheists, those who were gay, lesbian, all spoken very highly of General Colin Powell. So I just want to offer my prayers and condolences. Please lift the family, his wife Alma. General Powell was 84, his wife soon to be 84. Once again, she is recovering physically, but I can imagine they've been together for decades. So I can imagine that there's a hole in her soul and in her heart, losing the man that she loved and spent the majority of her life with. They have 3 kids. So, but I want to bring my guest on today. Usually he comes on Wednesdays. We call it Get Well Wednesday, but on social media, I've seen a lot of disturbing stuff about, and so this general narrative that I see coming from a lot of corners on social media is that, well, see, General Powell was fully vaccinated and look, he died. Well, it's not that simple. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do you all a favor. I'm going to do all of us a favor on camera right now. Dr. Thaddeus John Bell, one of the medical experts of the Geno Jones Show. If you watch the show, you're familiar with his resume, his reputation is above reproach. One of the leading voices in the medical community, not just here in the Low Country, but nationwide, especially one of the leading voices for African American doctors and doctors in general, Dr. Thaddeus John Bell. Dr. Bell, I want to thank you because normally it's bad enough that I'm dragging you on the show Wednesday. So here it is, Monday, and I really appreciate you coming on. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but
listen, let me say this before we get started. Thank you very much for your comments. I always learn a lot listening to you. And one of the things that you said that I think needs to be brought out. A lot of people are talking about he gave misinformation in front of the UN. I want to remind people that he was directed to do that and asked to do that by the president.
Thank you.
The president was supposed to go do it. Powell did not want to go do it, and Powell actually directed the president. I think was he Secretary of Defense at the time.
He was Secretary of State. The Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, yeah. So as you pointed out, he went there and gave erroneous information. You know, I want to make a point. The other day I saw a patient, and the patient was about to have surgery. And, you know, before patients have surgery, we have to do lab values on them and an EKG to make sure that they're going to survive the surgery. So the surgeon who does the surgery usually asks the attending physician, the primary care doctor, to give a medical clearance on the patient. Well, saw this young black man and initially gave him the clearance, but I told him I wanted to see the blood work. The blood work came back showing an abnormality, a significant abnormality. I immediately got in contact with a doctor who is an expert in that field and sent him to see this doctor before he had the surgery. The doctor called me back and said, Thad, this is an error that the lab has made.
Wow.
The patient is fine. It's a lab error. And so I was able to get back in contact with the patient to let the patient know that he could follow through with the surgery. I tell that story because I think it kind of gives you some insight as to where Colin Powell was. All right. He was given bad information. And so as a result, he gave this information to the world. His character and his reputation was impeccable up until that time. So sometimes circumstances can, and situations can put you in a place where the outcome may not be that good. But I thought you did an excellent job. Excellent job.
Well,
you know, I was in the military. One other thing, I was in the military, and I have a young nephew who's a general who just got promoted to general a couple of months ago. And so I have always held General Powell in high esteem because we are cut from the same cloth, you might say. Yeah. He's not a baby boomer. He's right before the baby boomers. So his work ethic is pretty much the same as mine. So I could identify with him. But I thought you did an excellent job.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bell. That means a lot coming from you. I didn't know you served. First time all the years I've known you, I didn't know that you were in the military. What branch?
Oh yeah, I was a flight surgeon in the military in the Air Force.
Wow.
I was in the United States Air Force for 10 years. I was a flight surgeon at the Charleston Air Force Base. I served in Desert Storm.
That was my next question. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
I served in Desert Storm. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in Charleston, but I went active duty here in Charleston. And my job was to, a lot of people were in the Air Force that shouldn't have been in there in the first place because they had pre-existing medical conditions. Okay. Wow. So when Desert Storm came up, they got sent over to Iraq, and a lot of them got sick while they were over there.
Really?
And it was in short order that a lot of them had to come back.
Wow. So
when they came back, I had to help process them out because of their pre-existing medical conditions.
So let me just jump in here. You served under General Powell then? He was a Joint Chiefs of Staff for the Desert Storm.
Yes.
He was a Joint Chiefs of Staff at that time.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Well, listen,
he's an incredible person.
I appreciate that feedback, but I appreciate you because basically you went where I was going to go. I do want to get the medical angle, but you basically finished the phrase, or you delivered my final punchline, which was General Powell was asked to do something that nobody else in George W. Bush's administration, including President W. Bush himself, didn't have the credibility to convince the rest of the world Dick
That's
Cheney,
exactly right.
Dick Cheney didn't have the credibility. President Bush didn't have the credibility. Nobody. I don't know who the defense secretary was. Condoleezza Rice, I believe, was in the administration at the same time. She didn't even have the credibility. The only person that had the credibility was General Powell as the Secretary of State. And General
That's
Powell,
exactly.
like I said, from the beginning, I've heard so many stories today that General Powell told George W. Bush before he went to Iraq that, listen, don't do this. This is a mistake. And President Bush didn't listen. He was the president. So that's a very important point, that Colin Powell basically was following orders and being a career military man. You understand that. You've been in the military. You understand when a superior gives you orders, especially when your commander in chief gives you a mission and orders, you have a duty, and you take an oath to, as long as the orders are not illegal, that's your job, is to execute whatever the policy of the commander in chief is. So it wasn't his idea. He couldn't overrule George W. Bush. And after the CIA basically lied to him and told him, oh, yes, this information that we're giving you is truthful, and it wasn't. And he owned that mistake, and he regretted it. That's probably, I'm paraphrasing, that was the biggest regret that he's had professionally. Quite frankly, he was angry about it.
He was very angry about it, and but he owned it.
Yes, and he didn't blame it.
He
didn't even blame. That's excellent. That's so important, Dr. Bell. Let's drill down on that. He didn't even own. He didn't blame President Bush, which he could have and should have, because at the end of the day, this was President Bush's policy, not Colin Powell's policy. And the CIA gave him this information, and the president had to sign off on the intelligence that the CIA gave Colin Powell to go in front of the United Nations. But I never heard him blame President Bush or anybody. He said, look, it was my mistake. I should have never did it. I was against the war, but basically I was following orders, and my commander in chief, this was his policy. This is what he wanted to do. So I was trying to basically make this situation work.
And the other point I want to make, that a lot of young people perhaps don't have an appreciation for, and it's a point that you made, and that is, he was the only one who had the credibility, who could sit in the United Nations that the world would listen to and say, okay, if Colin Powell says it's the case, it's the case.
Yes.
And that's the history. I hope that history will be kind to him, and I think it will, and they will make that point.
So Dr. Bell, help us out today. I know you've seen a lot of the things I've seen today on social media. You and I talked briefly earlier. I did a little research, so correct me if I'm wrong. So this condition that General Powell had before he came down with COVID-19, and it just goes to show you, wow, he got ill, went to the hospital about a week ago. So it really didn't take long for COVID to really take a fatal toll on his body. So he had a condition called multiple myeloma. I've heard people pronounce myeloma, myelioma.
You're correct, multiple myeloma.
Myeloma. Okay. So
yes.
How was I off? I'm not a doctor, but I just tried to give a basic explanation in terms of what this condition is, a blood cancer, and how it would make having COVID-19 so dangerous. As it turned out, it was lethal because it affects the immune cells that generate antibodies. Is that correct?
I thought you did an excellent job in explaining it. Multiple myeloma is a blood cancer that only affects about 2% of the population. Wow. African Americans are highly susceptible to getting or having multiple myeloma, and the outcome is usually very poor. The people with multiple myeloma don't live most of the time past about 5 years. Multiple myeloma can be defined as I'm going to do like Joe Madison, I'm going to put it where the goats can get it. Okay. But multiple myeloma is a cancer of the white cells. Okay. You know, we have red blood cells, we have white cells, and we have some other cells called lymphocytes. But multiple myeloma is a proliferation, a increase in these cells. And when these cells increase and begin to spread, they lose their original function, which is white cells usually increase when an infection takes place. Okay. That's why when a doctor does, well, case in point, when Clinton had, and we probably should mention something about that, but when Clinton got sick, they did a blood count on him. They found out that his white cell count was very, very high, which it was supposed to be. The white cells were reacting to the infection that was in his urinary tract. Mm-hmm. Well, when these white cells go crazy and they begin to proliferate, so much so that they lose their routine function, which is not only to gather around the bacteria, but also provide a barrier for the immune system to work better. So multiple myeloma is a proliferation of those cells. And of course, it predisposes one to significant infections. Usually these patients can get meningitis. These patients can have osteomyelitis, which is infection of the bones. They can become septic. They can develop other kinds of infections.
Let me jump in. Right. For those who may not know, explain to them what septic is, because they were afraid President Clinton was going to, from what we hear, he had a urinary tract infection.
Sepsis is just a medical term that we use when we want to convey that the system has been overrun with a bacterial infection throughout the entire body.
Wow. Okay.
So if we say that the patient is septic, that means that if we were to draw blood and grow out what's in his blood, it would be all over his body. Wow. So with Colin Powell having the risk factors, the major risk factors for multiple myeloma: African American, male, age.
Wow. He fit all three.
He's had all three. Not to mention the fact that it's alleged, and because I heard this morning, that he also had Parkinson's disease, which is a neurological condition, the one that Jesse Jackson continues to have right now. Okay.
Well, let me jump in there. Let me jump in on that point. It has not been officially confirmed on the Geno Jones Show, but according to Andrea Mitchell and NBC News, she's known the general for years, and according to Andrea Mitchell, she got this information from the family that General Powell was suffering from Parkinson's disease, and I didn't know. She also, Andrea Mitchell pointed out, that he was a prostate cancer survivor.
He's a prostate cancer survivor. He had prostate. In fact, I read up on that. He had prostate cancer and was under watchful waiting for a long time. And then when his numbers got high, by the way, he was aware of it. He had already been tracking his numbers, and when his numbers got high enough for his concern, he went in and had a prostatectomy, ended up having radiation treatment as well as chemotherapy. Now, he had gotten over that condition, okay? He had gotten over, but he was a 2-time cancer survivor.
Wow.
So he's had cancer twice. So he had multiple myeloma, and he had prostate cancer. And I need to remind people, he probably had some other stuff that 84-year-old men have that we are not privileged to know about.
True.
Okay? I can tell you that, 84-year-old men, not only do they, 84-year-old men don't get out of here without having at least 3 or 4 medical issues that can take you out just on their own face. Okay? So when he got the COVID vaccine, and so we need to let you know that COVID, and they're saying that he died from the complications of COVID. All right. He had a cancer that already affected his immune condition, which made him at risk for getting COVID, even if he had the vaccine. Okay. So we don't want people to start going out saying that he died from COVID. That's ignorant thinking if you think like that. You have to understand and appreciate the details of what multiple myeloma will do. Multiple myeloma will kill people even without having COVID, and it does. In fact, the prognosis for it is so high. If you notice, I said that it only kills, it takes out about 2% of the population. Mm-hmm. But because the prognosis is so high, it has already demanded a lot of research to try to find out what can be done to slow it down. Usually when people can have a bone transplant, they can be treated with chemotherapy, it can prolong people's life for about 5 years.
Well, it's funny. That's where I was going. I wanted to ask you because there's someone who's very famous that many people watch every morning, who I think she has survived close to 10 years. And she had, I believe it was a bone marrow transplant. I'm talking about Robin Roberts. I remember she was very sick with multiple myeloma, right. Very sick. And right. She had
So, everybody's multiple myeloma is not the same.
Okay.
We have to remind patients of that. Everybody's cancer, all cancer is not the same. Everybody's condition is not the same. I don't know the details of hers. The other thing is she's a much younger person. She was. Much younger woman. Yes. All right. So that puts her in a place where her chances of survival is significantly.
Well, let me ask you, because you said men are at more risk than women. Or I don't know if they die at higher rates. Is it a reason why it's more prevalent or worse for men to get than women?
The only thing that we know to date is that people with multiple myeloma have something in their DNA that changes, and it causes their blood cells their white blood cells to start proliferating like this. And it's seen mostly in older people 65 and above. However, I do know of several cases where multiple myeloma has been diagnosed in younger people. Okay, so one of the things that folk have to remember in medicine, I can give you this data, but there's one thing you will never hear me say. You will never hear me say always. Okay, because nothing is always in medicine. Okay, so we say it's more likely to happen in older people, but there are some younger people who've developed multiple myeloma, and there's some early data to suggest that it very well may run in families.
Oh wow, okay, interesting.
Yes.
So here's it, and I want you to follow up on this, Dr. Bell, because you and I talked about this. As far as I'm concerned, Colin Powell is Exhibit A on why all of us need to get the COVID-19 shot. We don't get it, like I've said, when I got it, I didn't get it because I was concerned about me. The number one person I was concerned about was my mother in her late 70s, compromised immune system, lupus, COPD. My wife didn't have any pre-existing conditions, but I thought about her. I didn't want anyone in my family, specifically my mother, to somehow maybe get it from me. I could have been asymptomatic and go around her. She get it. Her immune system is so compromised, and it's been compromised, where with me, I could be asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, and with her, she could have wound up like General Powell. So I just if you don't mind, just help me stress that point, because I've heard all this talk, and I still don't think people really understand. It's not just about you. I got vaccinated to protect everybody for me. And yes, I'm protecting myself, but I want to protect, because I could be that asymptomatic carrier and spread it to people whose immune system, i.e., like General Powell, who has a condition that puts him at the highest risk, or someone like my mother could come down with COVID-19, and it could be fatal.
Well, I can recall being on your show a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, when we talked about people with blood cancers are at risk of developing COVID if they are infected. They are at risk because their immune system, anybody with any type of blood dyscrasia, that means blood disease, blood cancer, particularly people with sickle cell anemia, okay, they are at high risk for getting infected with COVID. The other thing that I want to remind people is, just because you get the vaccine, it does not protect you 100% from getting COVID, okay? We have a lot of people who've gotten the vaccine who have survived, but they were younger. They didn't have all of the risk factors that Colin Powell had, particularly his age, 84. I want to remind people that he was 84 years old. Okay, when you're 84 years old, your immune system is going to be compromised just because you're 84. Okay, so pre-existing medical conditions do play a role in you getting sick and if you having breakthrough infections. That's why it will be very important going forward that you continue to wear your mask and you get vaccinated. And when you're around people, particularly older people who are likely to get sick, and keep this in mind too. A lot of older people who don't know they have pre-existing medical conditions. Excellent. Particularly in the African American population. A lot of people died from COVID because they never went to the doctor to find out that they had high blood pressure, or diabetes, or some type of blood dyscrasia, some type of blood disease. So that's why that all of those things that we just mentioned, played a role. I'm reminded, you and I were talking earlier about Hank Aaron. Right after he got the vaccine, he died about 3 or 4 days later.
Yes.
And people wanted to say, "Oh yeah, well, see, he died from the vaccine." No, he didn't die from the vaccine. He had some other things going on that not even the vaccine could have protected him from.
And it's tragic, because I did find this out, that Colin Powell had talked about, he and his wife had talked about that he had planned to get a booster. But before he could get the booster shot, he began to feel, he fell ill. He started feeling pretty bad. He and his wife about a little over a week ago. And it just goes.
From what I can understand, they did everything they possibly could. He got the cocktails that our past president got.
Monoclonal antibodies.
He got that, and anything else that they thought could have saved his life. He was at Walter Reed Hospital, which is one of the finest hospitals in the world, and probably was, and I'm sure was getting expert medical care. But, as you well know, man, we can't fight. Sometimes you cannot fight Mother Nature. Yeah.
And I just got to throw this in there because, I heard some people just listening around different sources talking about, well, I believe in just letting my body, my immune system naturally build itself up. But then after they said that, Dr. Bell, the same person said, I'm taking ivermectin and I'm taking there was some other like prescribed medicine that they were taking, and they were taking ivermectin, and they were doing something else along with zinc or
Hydrochloroquine.
yes, thank you, that one. But then so here's the hypocrisy, and I can imagine you're laughing because you see the foolishness in that statement. So he first said, see, I believe that's why you should just let your body's natural immune system build itself up. And then right after that, period, the next word, he's taking all this medicine. So wait a minute, dude, are you letting your body's natural immune system build itself up? Or are you not? Because apparently you're not letting your body.
He's taking all these vitamins. And as one of my patients told me the other day, he's in good physical shape. And so therefore, and I had to remind him, did he realize that the whole NBA has taken the vaccine and they played in a bubble to keep people from getting it? You don't think they were in good physical shape? What about all these football players, who are in real good shape? So, the ridiculous comments, man, continue to come in. What I found out is that I found myself really kind of listening to these people, and then I just tried to gently knock down every ridiculous thing that they say. I saw a patient this morning, in fact, who started giving me all of the reasons why he wasn't going to take the vaccine. 38-year-old white guy, and so I just kind of listened to him, and then after I decided to go to the next conversation, he said, so you don't have nothing else to say? I said, no, I don't have anything to say because you're talking crazy. Okay, and so it's come to my attention that you're talking crazy, and there's nothing else that I'm going to be able to say to you about. I said, but you need to take these medications that I'm giving you now. And I just want to remind you that 750,000 people have died from COVID, 184 million throughout the entire country, and
around the world. So
I mean around the world.
Really?
Yeah.
So globally, we've lost 184 million people. My
Yes.
God, that's the first time I heard that number. Over 715,000 in America is one thing.
Yes.
Over 185 million people globally.
And the other thing that people, are not appreciating is the mass number of people who are leaving medicine.
Yeah.
The mass number of nurses who are just getting burned out, who don't want to practice anymore. I just saw where 10% of doctors are going to retire from medicine at the end of the year.
Wow.
So we're going to start having a
doctor and nurses shortage. Oh my God.
Okay. And then when people get sick with COVID and end up in the hospital, the resources that those sick patients take away from other patients.
Yes.
So other patients can't get the kind of care that they need to have because the resources that required to keep people on the ventilator or to keep people in ICU go up significantly.
Yeah.
So human waste is going to be another part of this dilemma. But the bottom line, the one thing I want folks to take on, if there's anything that we can learn from Colin Powell's death, that is that if you have a blood cancer, you are at high risk of developing COVID. So make sure that you talk to your doctor, make sure that you get the vaccine, make sure that you get the booster. By the way, I think we should talk about people who have taken the Johnson & Johnson vaccine,
Okay.
you know that it's now been recommended. It hasn't been approved by the FDA, but it has been strongly recommended that if you had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at least 2 months ago, then they are recommending that you have the second one, that the second one will put you in a good place. But you need to be out at least 2 months from having it the first time. So all of the vaccines now eventually will involve getting a booster. The Moderna, the Pfizer, the Moderna, and just this past weekend, the Johnson & Johnson.
Dr. Bell, thank you for that. Dr. Thaddeus John Bell, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any medical questions, if you know you kind of on the fence about whether or not you want to get vaccinated, and maybe you have some other questions, Dr. Bell, is there an email address? You have some social media address where people can send you a question and you can hopefully.
Yeah, people can email me at belltj@comcast.net, belltj@comcast.net, and of course follow me on Facebook, and also follow me on Twitter.
What's your
and
handle?
by the way,
what's your handle?
And follow me on TikTok.
Oh, good. So, well, give us your handle, your social media handles.
Closing the Gap for you. Closing the Gap. The letter 4 and the alphabet U. Closing the Gap for you. Follow me on on Twitter. I do a lot of good stuff on Twitter.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. You do a lot of good stuff on every platform, in person, on social media, on camera, and I thank you. I always thank you for your time, man. Go enjoy your.
Thank you very much, Geno. I appreciate you asking me, man.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Thaddeus John Bell. As always, he gives you great advice. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. As always, God bless each and every one of you. God, most of all, thank you for letting me do the Geno Jones Show. I come to you live Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. on the West Coast. Tomorrow, I got a special guest. Okay, I tell you. R&B legends, Kool and the Gang. They got a brand new single out, I hear. So we're going to find out what's really going on with Kool and the Gang. My special guest tomorrow, right here live, 6:30 p.m. on the Geno Jones Variety Show. All right. Shout out to Mr. Markel Bailey, the official hairstylist and barber for the Geno Jones Show. He's on Instagram, KLB Cutting Up, KELBECUTTINUP. Alexandria Jones and Bruce Gage, the official stylist and wardrobe consultants for the Geno Jones Show. Alexandria Jones is on Instagram, _, line at the bottom, _, Lexi, LEXXIE, space Nicole Designs, Nicole, NICOLE. And you can also, she's Alexandria Jones. You type in Alexandria Jones, you'll see her. ALEXANDRIA, and Bruce Gage. You can search Bruce Gage on Instagram and on Facebook. Just type in, do a search. You spell Gage, G-A-G-E, Bruce Gage. All right, listen, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I love each and every one of you. Mother, you know I love you more than life itself. So have a great evening, afternoon, or morning. If you're not watching it in real time, if you're watching me live right now, the next live edition of the Geno Jones Show will come to you right here on my YouTube channel, 6:30 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, evening, with my special guest, Kool and the Gang. Until then, I always like to close the show by saying, be blessed. And thanks again for watching.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of The Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube.